Good evening, San Bernardino. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I hope everybody is having a great Juneteenth and day off at the same time if you got the day off. So tonight we're going to talk about homelessness. So as always, we'll make sure that our feed is up and everybody is able to see and hear and join. It's, I think, going to be a great conversation. So let me make sure. Oh my gosh, you guys. Remember, if I'm live, I can't answer your calls. So, okay. We will give it. Perfect. Okay. Love it. All right, guys. So for about a week or two now, I've been wanting to have this conversation. I think that homelessness has it's just spiraled out of control in the city. The conversations aren't there. The only ones that are, constantly addressing the issue is the community. We have, our city workers doing as much as they can. And I had the opportunity to sit in with Coffee with a Cop on Tuesday morning and just hearing the conversation from PD, hearing the conversation from code enforcement, and then hearing the community's take on what's happening, who's at fault, what our position is, what we should be doing. And I just I think this is our time to see, where we've come from, what we're doing, and where we need to go. Because there's a lot of moving parts right now to homelessness, potential decisions, years to come on activities. So that's what I want to discuss tonight. And, join in the discussion. Please feel free. Hi, Anna, Scott, Barbara, Sophia, Paula. Thank you guys for joining. Okay. So I want to take us back. I want you to go back to 2022 and the discovery in our community of this agreement nobody had ever known about between the city of San Bernardino and the ACLU regarding issues with the city's cleanups in the park and the homeless. Nobody knew about this. Like, we were so frustrated as a community as to why we weren't moving forward with anything. And then all of a sudden we hear there's a secret document of that exists that the council, mind you, the city council had no knowledge of when this first came about. Okay. And it was signed by Robert Field, the city manager at the time. And this is a copy of the agreement, just so you know. And Thomas Rice, the assistant city attorney. And this was in effect. And basically what it said was that the city was mishandling cleanups and that people were complaining, and to stave off any litigation, the city was going to come to an agreement. And they were going to, this is where, remember when we kept saying, like, why are you giving everybody a 72-hour notice? Like, where did that even come from? What is that? That's completely arbitrary. Yeah, it was. The city said that we will give people 72 hours notice of prior cleanups. That until December 31st of 2022, they weren't going to touch anybody's stuff, or they were going to have a full inventory of everything that was provided, and that was going to happen up until February 28th of 2023, and that this agreement was going to remain in effect until August 17th, a year later of 2023. And we were just like, are you kidding? How did you do this? Even the council didn't know. So this is where we start our story and our tale of woe of how the city of San Bernardino has been the one to be the most restricted. And we just right now, right here, understand we did this to ourselves. We did this to ourselves. Okay. They could have sued. I'm going to preface this. They could have went for an injunction. They could have challenged what we were doing. And I'm going to tell you this because what's going to be the reality a year later was not our reality in 2022, which is why things are so different today as the world turns. So we could have said, we'll see you in court, because there was nothing in that moment that was on the books to prohibit us from what we were doing. This was just, we decided this was our easiest way out. Okay. I hope I made that clear. I hope, because if I don't, please let me know. So this is August. August, we're doing cleanups. We're doing, we're kind of mitigating, not as much, not as great. Then comes February 2nd, 2023. Now, for years, I have been saying we need to establish a plan for homelessness. And in doing so, in creating this mitigated plan of how to truly affect each aspect, each community that makes up the entire unhoused population, we have to create that, and then we need to declare a state of emergency of homelessness, so that we can get all the federal and state funding that comes with everything. Yay. Yes. It's what I've asked for. It's what I was, I ran for mayor. That was what I was running on. When I ran for the 3rd ward, that was what I was running on. Well, February 2nd, 2023 comes, and this is, Helen Tran's just been elected, come out the gate, one of her first meetings, a declaration to declare homelessness a state of emergency in the city of San Bernardino. Ooh, except for one vital component. And we'll just go through it. The city of San Bernardino declared homelessness a state of emergency at Wednesday's council meeting. The state of emergency designation will help the city streamline zoning regulations, expand interim, temporary, and permanent housing options, and allow permanent or temporary structures for emergency housing. Awesome. Public comments were cut from 3 minutes to 90 seconds. This was our first realization that Helen Tran didn't want to hear from us. So several commenters expressed their dismay at the city for limiting their comments, but most people showed their support of the declaration. So people were happy this was happening. And I always, to this day, appreciate Councilman Ben Reynoso originally brought forth the idea of declaring homelessness as a state of emergency after, I kept talking about it. But I was at the meeting and I thanked him. But again, my frustration was there was no plan. What were we dedicating any of this potential funding towards? And they didn't have that. They didn't have the finite details that we truly needed in this declaration. I felt, and this is just my opinion, okay? So we come to what the city said, which was the city plans to create a homeless task force, which they did. And they want to allocate $20 million of the Rescue Plan Act funds to implement a homeless action plan and build a navigation center to support these services. Now, this is 2023. So I went on the city's website, and just so you guys know, the homeless state of emergency in our city outreach, SB City Outreach, is actually joined forces with Hope the Mission, a nonprofit dedicated to tackling homelessness. So this is a contracted service. I know someone thought that we were, so the county also does their outreach. And that's different than what we're like. They're all the Hope team, but just so you know, like county and city are just two separate entities. Okay. So this is February. June 15th comes, and the city announces that they've launched the homeless outreach team. to engage the homeless and effectively and efficiently connect them with available housing and other services. At that time, residents and businesses are able to report issues and request assistance. So now we have this this team in place. We can start moving on the cleanups. We can start doing different things. And this is the team that's going to do it. Yay. Awesome. This is June. Well, in all of this, we come to August 3rd. So we're moving and grooving. Remember the parks, we were cleaning them up. At Paris Hill, we were shuffling. People were moving. They would go from Paris Hill to Wildwood. They were being pushed out of Meadowbrook so that all these cleanups continued, but it looked nice. Things were happening. However, during this time, on August 3rd, 3 unhoused people with disabilities said that the city was violating their rights. Now, there's two scenarios here. And in reading the court documents, which we'll get into, you make your determination, I'll make mine. That the city has this guideline, and you're going to see the city's guideline. They have this agreement in place with the ACLU as far as implementation and what is all supposed to transpire as far as cleanups and allocated times and all that good stuff. And we'll look at that. Well, it just so happens that, 19 days before this agreement is set to expire, lo and behold, now there's a lawsuit because they violated this agreement. So, is it convenient? It looks convenient, right? You're 19 days away from losing your agreement on all of these timetables, on all of this like pre-prescribed extra work that we have to do to move people out of public spaces, okay? Doesn't look good for us. But then again, here we go, City of San Bernardino. You had 19 days. You could have literally just stayed out of the parks for the rest of August, let this expire, and then you would have had no agreement to violate. Either way we look at this, okay? Within 3 days of our expiration of that agreement, within 22 days of the lawsuit being filed, there's this case that comes up in Oregon. Now I would assume, I'm going to put some money on this, since it's all connected through the ACLU, that they knew this was coming. I can't prove that, but I'm just going to say I'm pretty sure that networks were connecting, signals were signaling, and this was not because this decision came out and people were challenging this. So in Grants Pass, what came to be was that you cannot move people in jet. This is in essence what it means. You cannot remove anybody from a public space if you don't have anywhere to put them. So I can't kick you out of a park. I can't kick you off a sidewalk or a public area if you don't have, if I, as a city, if I don't have a place for you to go. And it kind of became what ultimately was described as the 60% rule. If this municipality does not have a bed for upwards of 60% of the total population of the unhoused, then you can't tell them to move. That's rough. That's rough. And look, you have the original decision date of 2022, a rehearing date in July of 2023, and then this comes back to the circuit court in August of 2025. So I mean, like I said, this was not unknown, but This has an effect on us. In fact, this ruling till this day has a huge policy impact on how every municipal government and state and county is able to address homelessness within their jurisdiction. Very important. But this ruling even more so affects us because of the previous agreement we put into place. Well, this filing has happened in August, so nothing has been decided. Like there's no injunction in place. This is all in court, and we're moving back and forth, and everybody's presenting their evidence and doing what they do. In the meantime, December 8th, San Bernardino spends $3 million on motel vouchers to stem homelessness emergencies. So remember, they're like, we're going to do emergency shelter stuff, or if you need a place to go, because there are no city beds available. We can't meet, remember, and we can't meet this determination of 60% beds for our population. We don't have any city specific shelters. We've got Mary's Mercy's House, Salvation Army does their thing, Lutheran Services does their thing, but we don't specifically have our own. So San Bernardino leaders this week approved contracts with 3 motel operators. That ended up being a fiasco, including 2 outside of the city, which went away, to provide temporary shelter for residents experiencing homelessness. The move comes 10 months after the city leaders declared homelessness a local emergency, as well as other measures this past year meant to stem the crisis. Though the city council voted unanimously December 6th to approve the $3 million plan to provide vouchers to unhoused residents, some council members expressed concern San Bernardino isn't further along in developing permanent shelters for those without it. And they're absolutely correct. There are so many models we could have implemented, and now we're just going to spend the same exact amount of money on a voucher system, and I'm happy with that. Councilwoman Kimberly Calvin said during the live stream meeting. She had been touring and in contact with other agencies and shelters. I mean, and as well as the other council persons. Councilmember Sandra Barn, Damon Alexander also questioned why the city is moving forward with motel voucher system rather than other projects that would bring additional housing options to San Bernardino. I thought we were moving at a much more urgent matter than other options, Alexander said. Well, you weren't. But here's the thing. This is what always gets me. The concern, hey, this isn't the direction we want to go. And either one of 2 things happen. Either that's the comment and we go away, or the city says, hey, we understand and we're really trying to develop long term, but this money needs to be expended quickly. We're running out of time. And I can't exactly remember which conversation it was, but either way, this ended up being a motel voucher, which was temporary. It was going to give people up to like 14 days, and then they were back on the streets, which is why it wasn't a permanent solution. I hope, let's see, I'm gonna check comments. Let me make sure if anybody has any questions. Okay. All right. Okay. Good job. I see you guys you're into this. All right, so here we go. Now, what's been filed by the ACLU and what is actually happening. Now, Scott, I understand your frustration with the ACLU. Because it seems like, right, you're meddling. You're like, look, I'm like, if you feel this deep about these people being on the streets, take them in your city, do something with them. You know what I mean? And at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, we don't want to see them in our streets either. So what are we doing to address this? There's a balance on each side, and everybody has a job to do. And this is what it comes down to. This is why, I watch people talk about this judge. He's been around a long time. And people want to blame the judge. And people want to blame the ACLU. And people want to, drop homeless people off at their homes and do all these things. Now, do I believe that everybody is serving the best interest of homeless people by providing them rights to sleep in parks and become, exposed to the most dangerous circumstances that you know could possibly have as an unsheltered person? No, I think that's ridiculous. But let's look at this fairly, because it's not about how we feel, it's about the law. And none of us want anybody to be able to violate our rights. We don't want that. When it comes down to it, that's why everybody's filming every interaction they have, because we're like, hey, that's my right. So follow along with me. So in August, there's these court cases, and I'm going to post a link. I want you guys to read the link to the actual court case that happened, because this is different than what we hear in the community. And I've heard, you know, like, oh, they just threw away prescription meds. That was the first time. That was the 2022 settlement agreement, was that. This is like people who are handicapped, can't walk, and their stuff is thrown out. So this is like what they say is, after a person submits, so the city was coming and they were like, hey, you guys got to get out of the park. We're going to be cleaning it. Then they were required to say, well, I need accommodations. I either need a wheelchair, I need extra time, I need you to do whatever you're going to do. So the judge says that after a person submits a request for reasonable accommodation based on a disability, and this is all under the Americans with Disability Act. Okay, this is all ADA. And what's important, and that I saw versus what I heard, is that everything is cited by case law. Here's what this law says, and here's what this was determined. So the city is mandated to undertake a fact-specific investigation to determine what constitutes a reasonable accommodation for the situation. And that's in the Duvall case. For a fact-specific investigation to be adequate, the city must have gathered sufficient information from the person with disabilities who made the accommodation request, as well as from qualified experts, so that it is able to determine whether the requested accommodation was reasonable. When evaluating whether a requested accommodation is reasonable, the city is obligated to consider the particular needs of the person who made the request. So basically, what this is, I'm going to make a request to you, and you're going to see if it's reasonable, but you're going to only determine if it's reasonable based on my physical or needs or disability. That's what that's saying. The city could not have summarily concluded without undertaking the required investigation that requested accommodation. So no one-size-fits-all approach. Not everybody gets painted with the same brush. The declaration submitted by the plaintiffs describes several instances where the city failed to provide reasonable accommodations to people experiencing homelessness who were also disabled. By way of example, John and Tyson both declared that the city did not provide them with requested assistance to pack and transport their personal property during the cleanup of Meadowbrook Park. Further, Harner declared that the city did not respond to her request to be relocated to a location where she could be with her service dog. Regardless of whether the city received requests, because plaintiffs Harner, John, and Tyson have mobility-related disabilities and use wheelchairs, it should have been obvious to the city that they needed reasonable accommodations. Now, look, this is a hell of a burden. I'm going to be honest. This is a crazy amount of burden and resources to put on cities that are, like, you're talking about BURTEC cleanup people, you're talking about code enforcement and police officers. This is hard. It's hard to comply. And it's like, why do we have to deal with this? Why is this our burden to bear? Because the state has failed in being able to properly run itself. Honestly, this, at some point, this is so big. Really, does a municipality who's never had to do this now have to do all of this? So we can take that, I think, is a fair. I think it's fair for us to feel overwhelmed by this new burden on us, not to become reasonable in ADA accommodations in everyday life, but in, like, you know, cleaning the park. So this is what the judge saw. And the judge says, okay, well, This is a preliminary injunctions. It enjoins the city, its contractors and agents, which means Burtech, from removing individuals experiencing homelessness and or their unattended property or attended property from encampments. So this is why they can't even throw away trash. And it's my biggest pet peeve. I'm like, why can't you just go in there and throw all that crap away? Like, you guys grab empty cups and bags and broken strollers and everything on them. You can't. They can't go clean it up. But what's crazy is that neither you nor I could go take our trash and dump it in the street over park because we would be cited for it. But yet this is considered personal property. It's an issue, but we'll get to that. The cities, so they can't do any of that within the cities pending a final resolution of this case. The court will consider vacating, so getting rid of the preliminary injunction, if the city crafts and presents a lawful revised policy regarding homelessness, encampment cleanup, and operations, and if the revised policy is approved by the court. And this was signed January 12th. It's June 19th. So this is what the court said. They're like, all right, well, your policy violates your ADA accommodations. And if you get us something, then we'll vacate. And you know what, like, Tim, you make a really good point. The city won't even read ADA emails. Like, if you have an ADA accommodation to where you can't physically make it to a meeting or can't speak, you know, in a way that you would want to be represented, the city's not even willing to read your emails. So I'm not going to say that they weren't willing to make some type of accommodation, but it's a lot. It's a lot, but yeah, I'm not feeling that we're too ADA accommodating. So that's a good point, Tim. So this is what the judge did. He said, here's the laws. Here's what your policies are. They violate it. Let's fix it and lift this injunction. Now, what is the citywide policy of cleanups and encampments? So back when we found out all about this unknown agreement between the ACLU and the city, Councilman Alexander sent out to the community the draft, or I don't know if he just wrote, looks like he wrote draft across, but I'm not sure, of this citywide policy in encampment cleanups. So this is where you get the notice to vacate shall be posted 72 hours before the arrival of staff. The notice to vacate must be fully completed, including notification timeframes. The notice to vacate must state the date that you're coming, maybe within a 2-hour window. I mean, this is very detailed to how they have to notice you. Upon arrival at the encampment and before commencement of any cleanup, ample time should be provided to occupants of the encampment to retrieve personal property and confirm which items are trash, suitable, and disposable. Reasonable accommodation should be afforded to any occupants who express a need as a consequence of a disability or medical condition. Such accommodations may include additional times or assistance. You guys, this is in our policy. This is in the agreement. But here's the thing. Here's the argument. We told you we were coming 72 hours ago. 3 days. You had 3 days to get your crap together. Figure out what's trash and what you're keeping. And I don't care if you need extra ADA time. That's 3 days advance notice. But we didn't challenge this. We didn't confirm for ourselves what really needed to be in there. And so that's been the hard part. So in most cases, an additional minutes or 1 hour should suffice. However, city staff may consider providing an additional 24 hours. Cleanup should occur between 7:30 a.m. and 6 o'clock p.m. only unless more urgent action requires due to exigent circumstances as determined by a supervisor. During any cleanup, city staff should proactively offer services to homeless individuals, ideally coordinated in advance. So like with the teams and everything. So you're funny, Paula. Um, so storage of property. The city shall store all personal property removed in connection with any encampment cleanup except for the following: trash, property that poses a serious or imminent risk to human health and safety, abandoned property, contraband, or evidence of a crime. City staff shall take special precautions to ensure none of the following are disposed of during the cleanup: medications, wallets, phones, bicycles, and important documents, identification, medical documents, etc. So that had been an issue that people were bringing up. So they were going to store personal property at a city facility administered by the Public Works Department and shall be reachable by phone, through which individuals may set up aside time to collect their property. Property shall be stored in a logical manner at the facility. So we became a whole storage unit, a cleanup team. This is a lot. This is a lot to ask of your Public Works Department, your police department, your trash, and be all in one. And had we not previously signed this agreement with the ACLU in August of 2022, our realities may have looked very different in challenge. Very different. But this is, again, we signed this. We did this to ourselves, not the judge. What are you going to do? You're going to take a signed agreement to a judge and you're going to say, hey, by the way, please don't hold me accountable for the decisions that I've made. I don't know how that works. So we put ourselves in this situation and it sucks. It's because, you know, as this is happening, this happened, you know, the ruling came in January 12th, January 18th. We get told that the city of San Bernardino, we had applied, if you guys remember, in 2022, early 2023, for the probably round 3 of Home Key grant, and we were awarded that for an all men's bed shelter. And so there was a kickoff, and Lutheran Services, who was our co-sponsor, and we were allocating like $5 million. We got the contract, and this has to be completed within a year. This is this is into the Inland Wire had posted this, that within 1 year, by 2025, this center, 140 interim housing units for homeless men, has to be set up. So we're going to see what happens. I know Lutheran Services is working on it, but there's not a lot of people who have a lot of faith in these projects. Like this one. So if you guys remember, one of the first readings was that we were going to build this navigation center at 6th Street at the old School of Hope site, that this was going to be a central location, as many as 224 housing units in the first phase. The city allocated $21 million to build the navigation center, with $12.4 million coming from the Rescue Plan Act, which originally was $20 million, according to the article. And these funds must be obligated by the end of the year. That's this year. But here's the thing. We heard this earlier this year that the timeline hasn't even begun on this. We were literally in March trading the site with the water department. There are many conversations happening that we may have enough funding to build this space, but we don't have the funding to maintain this space for years to come. And the question is, well, what are you building if you can't maintain? How do you have these wraparound services? And you may have 224 beds, but where are they going next year? This is a big deal. This is why it's like, hey, you got, $60 million plus, but no long-term plan, nothing, no plan. No plan. We also heard, which was super interesting, and I don't remember what meeting it was, but I think it was earlier on this year, where they were trying to do another hotel conversion. They were trying to bring somebody on, and I can't remember the specifics. I believe Councilwoman McCalvin questioned it, and then Theodore Sanchez stepped in, and he's like, I don't understand why we are trying to bring this other hotel in and create more of a voucher system when we've been told by the court that voucher systems are not sufficient to grant relief in the injunction. And the rest, and those of us in the meeting were like, what? Like, I thought you just, had to get the encampments policy updated. No, you guys, this whole $3 million voucher program means nothing because it's temporary. We aren't doing what we need to keep people off the streets. It's a revolving door. If you get here, go to a hotel up to 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks, and then after that, you've exhausted your voucher and now you have to go back on the streets. Not sufficient, doesn't count towards the 60% of beds that we needed. That's a big deal. And that came out just, out at a meeting. So then April 18th comes and we get an update that the governor, remember now we hate the state of California. We watch we watch the meetings, everybody's mad at the governor, everybody's blaming the state of California. But then, hey, lo and behold, thank you so much. We're so grateful because we get $4.6 million to address homelessness. So they gave us, $36.4 million for their grant. Now we've got another 4.6 million. And this is supposed to help us address encampments. The project will span a critical 5.2 mile corridor along Waterman that contains encampments at approximately 200 homeless individuals. This area includes 2 state right-of-ways, State Route 18 and Interstate 210, extending into such areas as maintenance tunnels and freeway structures, pedestrian pathways, and surrounding neighborhoods. This new funding will get people out of tents and into housing across California, says Governor Gavin Newsom, who announced the grant during a virtual press conference. But it's not just about addressing homelessness, it's about taking back our parks and sidewalks. I'm thrilled that San Bernardino will be receiving nearly 4.6 million from the governor and the state of California to address encampments in our city, said San Bernardino Mayor Helen Tran. This funding is a significant step towards the cleanup at the Waterman Avenue and provide essential support and resources to individuals experiencing homelessness in our city. This funding will provide permanent housing for 60 individuals and assist in securing interim housing placement for at least 40 unhoused individuals within the area along Waterman Avenue. Funds will also provide support services that may lead toward permanent housing. $4.6 million, and you're helping 100 people. I'm not a wholehearted finance person. I mean, I can add, I can stack, I can divide, I can multiply. But I can't figure out mathematically how you can only help 100 people with $4.6 million. And on top of that, $34.6 million, $20 million in ARPA funds, and you can't get, we'll say max 2,000 people off the streets with upwards of $60 million. And where is this money, by the way? Have you guys noticed? I mean, let me know if I'm the only one that looks up and down Waterman Avenue and I'm like, where have you helped people since April get off the streets? The encampments are awful. The poor La Bodega, I mean, every time you turn around, they're right there. The people are migrating up and down. The Walgreens on Waterman is awful. The encampments are just, where's the $4.6 million? Where'd it go? What are you doing with it? Have you guys heard, maybe I've missed, and let me know in the comments, have you guys heard anything about uh the homeless being removed? Because I haven't. So real quick, sorry, I see your guys' comments. So no shovels in the ground on any of the projects yet. The navigation center, there's nothing. And I know Councilwoman Calvin has repeatedly asked for updates, and there's nothing available. So Steve, I want to make sure I ask you. Let me go through some of this. Rollerson, yeah, you know, people do avoid our city. People, I was driving through it today with a friend, and it's becoming so disheartening to see the segments that are just becoming inundated with the homeless. And it's really like you can feel it affecting the neighborhoods that were really trying to stay together. And I know someone had said that the North End is turning and becoming an issue. And it is, because look, this stuff wasn't going to stay downtown forever. This problem is a spreading problem, and it affects everyone in every facet of life. And we are not, as you guys can see, I say this often, and I think people think it's just, you know, being negative or being not being optimistic. If you can show me what we've done, I'd appreciate that, because I can't visually see it. So in the comments, if you can, let me know. Let me know what you've seen. Because this is what I see. This is the reality. The trash, the tents upon tents, the you can't use your parks. You're not taking your kid to a park. I mean, I went down to Paris Hill to take pictures. These aren't the pictures. I was trying to get them up quick. This is the stuff we've seen online. But I went to Paris Hill Park, and I was talking to people, and the homeless people. I'm like, what are you doing out here? And a lot of it's drugs. A lot of it is, you know, mental illness. And the people that are the working homeless tend to be in the cars, and I've had conversations with them. But it comes down to the people that have the cars and the trailers are beefing with the people in the tents, and the tents have their own little, you know, integrated communities and systems. Like, this is a whole living organism amongst itself. And it is, and I'm going to tell you this, how I truly feel is, it is no longer a homeless crisis. We are facing a public health and safety crisis for everybody that's not in that immediate area. The people that are there, we've already determined we need to help them through housing initiatives and all of this stuff. But it is the rest of us who are being caught up in this minority dealing. So 98% of us who have to abide by the laws, who have to self-regulate and govern and follow the rules, are being held hostage in how we are able to maneuver and enjoy our own communities and taxpayer-funded amenities, something like that. I'm not going to try it again. And not have and just have to wait for court to decide how we're allowed to live our lives. And it's becoming so burdensome for our community. And I feel it. I really do feel it. And I don't want you to think it goes ignored, because it feels like it goes ignored in the council meetings. So we hear too about San Bernardino being a dumping ground, that there is so much so many things happening, or nowhere else, that it's really all of our faults. And that people don't care about San Bernardino and they can just do whatever. Well, I want to speak to that, because it's not that people aren't dumping people here. I'm not going to say that they don't, but let's not say that our surrounding areas aren't doing things. Because Fontana got $15.5 million to dedicate towards hotel conversions to help the homeless. And on top of that, they just got another $3 million from the county. And then Redlands did their whole hotel conversion with Project Home Key. And the county of San Bernardino did a Project Home Key in our city. And Victorville is doing their part. And look, people say, well, Fontana, of course they're getting extra help. They, Aquanetta Warren is the executive assistant to the county supervisor, Jesse Almendarez. Okay, yeah, she is. So what is that? Is that an extra in? Probably. Is that a secured relationship? Yeah, most definitely. Well, what do our city council people do to our supervisor? Well, we've got one who puts him on blast on our Facebook and tells him that he's the problem. So I don't see our supervisor being out here like, let me go write this person a $3 million check to help do completely nothing like you've done for all of the years you've been on the council and then blame everybody else. Like, we can't operate like that. If what we've seen through this presentation is that we've done nothing, how can you blame other people for your inaction? How do you justify that? That it's everybody else's fault and you have nothing to show on your track record but a quote in the paper? What benefit is that to us? We've done nothing. That's rough. That's a lot. Uh, so we'll just, we gotta have solutions. You can't blame the state of California and then take all their money and not provide a solution and not be accountable. You can't do that. You could dislike the state of California. You could say, hey, there are, and if you don't, I don't even know where's the accountability to say you've failed. A lot of things have failed in the state. And we'll get to that. But at the same time, you say, while you have failed, our city has failed. And so we need to address these failures, not like it's everybody's fault and you need to go clean up your 18 homeless people and don't look at our 2,000. You can't do that. And be respected. Literally, the way that our regional partners look at us is they laugh. They laugh at the people that get up and talk bad about them because they're like, you're a joke. And it's true. You're a joke because you blame everybody else for your problems and don't come up with a single solution that you fight for. So let's talk about the things that we need to fight for. So, like I said, homelessness is this multifaceted problem that involves all communities. Well, we need to look at dedicated veteran housings. We need to have an initiative. Right now, we don't. And we know that veterans are on our streets and in our parks, that some of them are suffering from, byproducts of being in war and in service. And we're not doing our part. I don't feel we don't even have like a dedicated monument to really, have this memorial for them, let alone housing opportunities. And so we need to create these relationships with Loma Linda veterans, with our county services, with the federal government and the Department of Defense and and Veteran Affairs, whichever way that we can, so that we can start creating dedicated housing. Very, very important, and utilizing the type of people and services like veterans who work to get other veterans off the street and work with them to create the type of relationships to bring them back, because that's something that some of us may never understand that a veteran would. And I know Sergeant Major Coker does this and does the court with them and rehabilitation, and just being able to expand on that and really just looking at our dedication to veterans. Next, shelter and treatment centers for the mentally ill and drug addicted. As I told you in talking to the people at the park, drugs plays such a huge factor. There is, uh, one, drugs have run rampant. We've declared a war on drugs since I was a child, and we're not getting anywhere fast. But we've seen with methamphetamine, with Molly, and the new stuff that they lace everything with. I'm sorry, I'm not big up on the drug conversation. The stuff that they keep catching, it's becoming an epidemic. Well, it already is, but we're not doing anything about it. I fought and lobbied and did everything I could to see us to see the county and our city be able to take advantage of Laura's law. Well, the county adopted Laura's law last year. We need to find a way to properly implement that. Now, I remember Helen Tran trying to take every credit in the world for working with James Ramos to go get Patton State Hospital as an option for housing. Nothing's happened. Nothing. This is the time we need to fight. Look, it's not fair, and this is where I absolutely disagree with the ACLU. I don't believe that everybody has this right to be free to live on the streets as they so choose. Because if you're mentally ill or drug addicted, is it really a choice? Are you even cognizant enough to make that time of determination for yourself untreated? And so I would like to see shelters and treatments for the mentally ill and the drug addicted at Patton. I think it's a totally separate segment that is unhoused and needs to be treated fairly and with dignity and respect. And that means addressing their issues, not just letting them run naked through the streets and not know where they're at. Additionally, we have our children. We have unhoused children. This is from The Sun. In America's finest city, homelessness spreads like a disease. We have to build a relationship with our school district and how we are going to make sure that our children have a safe space to sleep and to be productive. And there is just this amazing disconnect between the city and the school district, because the school district is made up of children who are parented by residents of the city of San Bernardino. And the city of San Bernardino is responsible providing services and a quality of life for those parents and the children that attend San Bernardino Unified School District. So we can't separate the two. And I really want to make sure we work for that relationship. And it's not a blame game. It is a solution driven conversation that just isn't being had at the level it needs to be had. And then the thousands of Californians that work and are unable to afford to live in houses. So you have the working homeless, unhoused. And that comes to what we're moving forward with, but not as quickly as we need to, a housing element, really building housing for people. And remember, if the market has enough houses in it, it becomes a comparable price with the shortage. That's why we have so many high rents, so many high market rate, because there's just not enough product on the shelf. So we need to make sure we're fighting for that and making sure that it's coming. And then transitional youth housing. Remember, there are children in foster care who are aging out, people, kids that are homeless and don't have families, and making sure that they're being looked at and after and being provided that safe space, because they are one of the largest trafficked groups of homeless. And nobody deserves that. And when people's parents pass away and they have no family and they end up on the streets, or their parents lose their homes and everybody has to be separated, we have to be prepared for that too. So I think this is a great opportunity for us. And looking at Cal State or looking at Valley College and looking at the county, this is actually a project that they built, and I want to say is up in Sacramento, and it's been amazing for everybody. So what do we do quickly and efficiently? Well, for all these warehouse lovers, I think we either can convert or build a warehouse style transitional housing with windows and bathrooms and multi-stories, where your first floor is all wraparound services. You can have your Head Start, you can have job placement training, you can have therapy services, whatever you need. If you're not drug addicted, if you're not a veteran, if you're not a transitional youth, this is for everybody else. The first floor is strictly men. Second floor is strictly women. And the third floor is families, because keeping that family unit, and this is for those who can't yet afford to be in housing on permanent status, for them. Like, why not? And look, everybody has a place in their life. The greatest thing about this, and I know our council was very opposed to it, if this is in an industrial area, in a place where we have an open building, we can help people secure jobs who aren't high level workers in the same warehouses we have in the city, and make sure that they are able to transition out. So this is always an option for us, and I think we can do this. And last on this, stop bad laws. We're talking about Sacramento. We're talking about poor representation. We're talking about things that affect us daily, and yet we don't hear anybody challenging these things. And it's not talking bad about the elected officials and saying you're horrible and you're not doing your job. It's saying, hey, look, this type of legislation is going to negatively affect us. And as a council, and I put myself on there because that's exactly what I'll be doing as a Seventh Ward council person, is speaking up and fighting. This shouldn't be an hour conversation on Facebook. This should be a one-on-one when we go to Sacramento, when we go to Washington, D.C., when we're meeting with our representatives at home. We have to speak up. It can't just be the chief of police. It can't just be a handful of advocates. It has to be our represented body. So they have a huge role in this. And so, you guys, I hope all this makes sense. It's such a big story, and I need us to be prepared. You need us to be prepared. Our city needs us to be prepared, because remember, the Olympics are coming to LA in 2028. And in doing so, they're going to be cleaning up, preparing for tourism, and pushing what they don't want out. Now, have they put this crazy tower of $600,000 units together for their homeless? Yes. Will that create a sustainable spot for everybody? Absolutely not, because we're not all addressing the underlying issues of homelessness. Housing is not the underlying issue if you're mentally ill or drug addicted or don't have a job and can't sustain it. So we need to be ready so that push doesn't, we push back. And we can only push back if we have done our due diligence in creating shelter for our homeless. And here's the other thing, as everybody's talking about grants passed and the Supreme Court making their decision at the end of the month, well, their decision is going to allow us not to have 60% beds, but we still don't have beds. We have absolutely nothing in place to address homeless with or without the grants pass decision. And that's what this comes down to at the end of the day. We're not addressing homelessness. It all sounds good, but there's no shovels in the ground. There's no beds in place, and we need to change that. And so thank you guys for your time. I see all of your fentanyl. Thank you, Scott, fentanyl. Thank you guys so much for all of your time. And I will go through the comments again. I'm going to post the link to the injunction so you can read it. But, you know, knowledge is power. And I just don't want us to keep repeating that this is everybody's fault, and that we don't have any accountability for why our city looks the way it does. So thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your week.